Welcome, everyone. It's been a while since I uploaded a Unsolved Mysteries video. I covered the first two tiers around a month ago, so I thought now would be a good time to go back to this Unsolved Mysteries Iceberg. To be honest, I've been avoiding it because it's kind of intimidating. Each tier is as long as a separate Ultimate Iceberg video, and somehow just looking at it as one just makes me procrastinate on it. But yeah, I'm back, and if you're new to this iceberg is about unsolved mysteries, and it contains 10 tiers and over 1,000 entries in total. As I mentioned just now, I've already covered the first two tiers, so this here is the entire third tier. And yeah, I think you probably know what unsolved mysteries are, and it's also pretty self-explanatory, but just in case you don't, it's just all about things which no one has any definitive answer for. So because of this, normally it includes all kinds of phenomenon from UFOs seen in the sky, true crimes like abductions, murders, and strange surveillance footage found of victims or suspects. It also contains some entries related to strange creatures. A famous example would be Bigfoot or similar cryptids. In fact, it also has some entries related to eerie, unexplainable phenomenon about deep space. So yeah, basically anything which is baffling, confusing, and has no answer. Okay, so it's kind of getting long, so let's begin the video with third tier's first entry, Flannan My Mind. A user named Jake posted on Reddit in 2021 asking for help to identify a song from the 80s or 90s. He provided detailed descriptions, but neither he nor anyone else could recall the artist, title, or lyrics, apart from the vague phrase, Flannan My Mind. Many who read the post found the song's melody and lyrics familiar. This was likely because the song sounds European, but apparently in the 80s and 90s, Brazilian bands often pretended to be European to gain more popularity because at that time the European style was more popular in Brazil. Countless internet users scoured databases, archives, and music libraries, but no match turned up. This case bears resemblance to other musical mysteries, like the most mysterious song on the internet, which also couldn't be identified for years. Some theorize that Flannan My Mind might be an obscure demo tape or an unreleased song. The case of 144 mysterious flying objects refers to the 2021 U.S. government report on unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. This highly anticipated report revealed that 144 UAP sightings had been documented by military personnel between 2004 and 2021. Out of these, only one incident could be confidently identified as a deflated weather balloon. The other 143 remained unexplained. Many of the recorded objects exhibited flight characteristics beyond current human technological capabilities, like high-speed maneuvers, sudden acceleration, and the ability to transition between air and water. The report, intended for congressional review, provided minimal explanations and left the public with more questions than answers. Theories about the origin of these objects varied widely, with suggestions ranging from foreign surveillance technology to extraterrestrial crafts. The Pentagon insisted these sightings were being taken seriously as potential security threats, though no evidence explicitly linked the objects to alien life. On the night of June 11, 1930, an unsettling series of murders were committed in New York, with cryptic clues that would remain unsolved. The 3X murders, as they became known, began when an unidentified man killed Joseph Mazinski in Queens, New York. Joseph had been sitting in a parked car with a woman named Catherine May when the stranger approached, shot him dead, and handed Catherine an envelope, ordering her not to open it until the following day. The assailant then escorted her to a nearby bus stop, leaving her unharmed but horrified. Catherine initially hesitated to report the incident, but soon after, police found Joseph's body, and when questioned, Catherine handed over the strange note. It read, Joseph Mazinski, 3X097, and obviously this left authorities without any immediate leads or clues to the meaning of the numbers. And then, just 5 days after Mazinski's murder, another eerily similar killing took place. Nick S. and Elizabeth Ring were also parked in a car in Queens when a man approached, asked for Nick's license, and ominously remarked, "You're the guy we want. You're gonna get what Joe got." Without warning, he shot Nick dead. Once again, the killer escorted Elizabeth to a bus stop, left her a note, and disappeared. Shortly after these murders, letters began arriving at a local newspaper, purportedly from the killer. The first message called Joseph a rascal and a dirty little rat, and promised that 14 of his associates would face the same fate. A follow-up letter came after Nick's murder, reiterating that 13 more men and 1 woman would soon be targeted. Then, only days later, Joseph Mazinski's brother received a direct threat, demanding the return of unspecified papers, though what these papers were or why they were significant remained unknown. In a twist, authorities later received a letter from the self-proclaimed killer, claiming to be an agent of an organization called the Red Diamond of Russia. According to this note, Mazinski and Nick were allegedly former agents who had betrayed the organization by stealing sensitive documents. The letter stated that these documents had been recovered, marking an end to the so-called mission, with a cryptic line, "3X is no more." After that, the murders ceased, though the police continued receiving letters. Whether these messages were truly from the original killer or simply from imposters remains a mystery. At 3 p.m. on January 13, 1996, 9-year-old Amber Hagerman and her 5-year-old brother Ricky were riding bikes near an abandoned Winn-Dixie grocery store in Arlington, Texas. After some time, Ricky decided to head back to their grandparents' house alone, leaving Amber in the parking lot. When he arrived, his grandfather immediately noticed Amber was missing and, alarmed, asked Ricky where she was. Upon learning she'd stayed behind, her grandfather took Ricky along to check on her. When they arrived at the empty lot, they found flashing police lights and officers combing the area. Amber's grandfather's heart dropped when he saw her pink bike abandoned on the ground. He approached the officers and received the devastating news. Amber had been abducted by a man in a black pickup truck. A local resident, Jim Keyville, had witnessed the entire scene from his house nearby. Seeing that Amber was alone, he'd kept an eye on her and watched as a black pickup sped up. A man leapt out, grabbed her, and pulled her into the vehicle before speeding away. Though Jim couldn't provide a detailed description, he noted the man was likely a white or Hispanic male with brown hair. The abduction triggered a massive search effort, with the Arlington community anxiously hoping for her safe return. But tragically, on January 17th, 4 days after she was taken, Amber's body was found by a man walking his dog near a secluded creek bed. His dog, barking frantically, led him to Amber's lifeless body, lying abandoned just 4 miles from where she was last seen. Medical examiners determined she had likely been kept alive for 2 days and had suffered fatal injuries to her neck. The tragedy overwhelmed the family with grief and regret, as Amber and Ricky had only been allowed to bike close to home, and they had repeatedly cautioned the children about bad people lurking in the world. Investigators desperately pursued leads, but identifying the abductor proved difficult. Keyville later estimated that the suspect appeared to be in his 20s or early 30s, with a medium build and a height under 6 feet. Police also suspected there might have been witnesses at a laundromat next to the grocery store. However, many of those people might have been undocumented immigrants who feared deportation if they approached the police. Sergeant Grant Gilden of the Arlington Police voiced his belief that the abductor could be someone local, possibly familiar with the secluded creek where Amber's body was found. Yet, despite the community's involvement and numerous tips, the case went cold as the years passed. Amber's story, however, would not fade into obscurity. Deeply moved by the tragedy, a local mother named Diane Simone contacted a Dallas-Fort Worth radio station with an idea. She suggested an alert system, similar to weather alerts, that could notify the public about child abductions. This led to the birth of the Amber Alert, America's missing broadcast emergency response, which has since been instrumental in helping recover thousands of children. Dubbed the Angel of the Meadow, this unidentified woman's remains were uncovered in 2010 in Angel Meadow, England. Her body had been hidden under a blue carpet, and an examination of her skeletal injuries indicated severe trauma, including a broken neck and a fractured jaw. Forensic analysis suggested that her clothing style and advanced decomposition pointed to her having been born around the 1950s, with her death likely occurring sometime in the 1970s or 1980s. This timeline implies that she lay concealed under the carpet for nearly 30 to 40 years before her discovery. Despite continued investigative efforts to determine her name or any known affiliations, her identity remains a mystery. The B1 Butcher is the name given to an unidentified serial killer who targeted Namibia, southern Africa, between 2005 and 2007. This serial killer is linked to at least 5 brutal murders, with the remains of victims found near the B1 highway, earning the killer the B1 Butcher nickname. The victims, all women ranging from young adulthood to middle age, included 21-year-old Juanita Mabula, 22-year-old Melanie Jantz, and 36-year-old Santa Helena, while 2 others remain unidentified. Each of these women suffered horrific fates. Their bodies were membered, some body parts bearing signs of having been frozen, before being discarded along the B1. The circumstances of each murder were unique. Melanie's cause of death was strangulation, while Juanita's skull bore fractures from a blunt force. It's suspected that at least 2 of the identified victims were ex-workers, possibly making them easier targets for the killer. As fear grew, investigators focused on 2 suspects in the mid-2000s. The first, Heinz Narim, a German man, faced allegations of attempting to ape and strangle a woman in 2007. Although charged, Heinz consistently denied involvement in the B1 murders, and by 2010, the case against him fell apart due to lack of evidence, leading him to sue the Namibian government for falsely implicating him. The second suspect, Hans Huslaman, was a convicted murderer who had been released in 2004 after serving time for previous killings. Accused of the B1 crimes, Hans committed suicide in 2008, a move some interpreted as a sign of guilt, while others believed he feared unjustly returning to prison. In the wake of Hans's death, some investigators began to wonder if the B1 murders might not have been the work of a single person. Theories emerged suggesting a potential ringleader with accomplices or even multiple copycats who committed similar crimes under the guise of the B1 Butcher. This disturbing possibility added another layer of complexity to an already baffling case, and to this day, the identity of the B1 Butcher remains one of Southern Africa's darkest unsolved mysteries. The Backyardigans pilot refers to a lost episode from the early days of the popular Nick Jr. animated series, The Backyardigans. While the series officially premiered in 2004, this initial pilot was created in 2002. The animation style in the pilot was different from what audiences later saw, with a storyline reportedly similar to an episode called The Heart of the Jungle. To date, only a single second of footage from this pilot has surfaced, appearing in a Nick Jr. promotional ad showcasing upcoming shows. Beyond this brief clip, the rest of the pilot remains lost media. The assassination of JFK stands as one of history's most scrutinized events, largely because of the numerous conspiracy theories it inspired. Many question whether Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, with some speculating that more than one person was involved in JFK's killing. One prominent figure in these theories is the Badge Man, an alleged figure reportedly captured in a photograph taken at Dealey Plaza, the assassination site. Seen standing behind a wall with what looks like a flash concealing part of his face, this figure appears to wear a police-style uniform with a visible badge, leading to the nickname Badge Man. The photograph in question was taken by Mary Moorman just moments after JFK was shot. Though Moorman took several photos that day, this one has drawn the most attention for its possible link to a hidden gunman. After the first gunshot, several witnesses rushed toward the grassy knoll, believing the shooter may have been positioned there. Despite this suspicion, no assailant was found. Initial investigations did look into the possibility of an individual resembling the Badge Man, but no concrete leads or identities were confirmed. One theory links the Badge Man to Gordon Arnold, a soldier who later claimed he had been standing on the grassy knoll, recording the motorcade with a movie camera. According to Arnold, a man in uniform demanded he turn over his camera, a claim that has led some to believe that Arnold encountered the Badge Man. However, no photographic evidence places Arnold at the scene, and some argue that his story may be fabricated, questioning whether any uniformed man confiscated his camera or fired shots that day. Another theory proposes that the Badge Man could have been Officer J.D., a Dallas police officer and veteran who was killed by Oswald roughly an hour after JFK's assassination. Though this connection has intrigued some theorists, there is no conclusive evidence linking Tippit to the Badge Man. Many remain convinced that Badge Man was a second shooter who successfully evaded capture, while skeptics argue that the figure in the photograph may be a visual illusion. They believe that the human brain may be inclined to find recognizable patterns in ambiguous forms, reinforcing the belief in multiple gunmen. Disappearance of the Beaumont children, Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont, aged 9, 7, and 4 respectively, is one of Australia's most devastating unsolved mysteries. On January 26, 1966, the Beaumont siblings vanished from Glenelg Beach in Adelaide, sparking a massive national search that gripped the country. Tragically, despite extensive efforts, the children were never found, and their case remains unresolved to this day. That hot summer morning, Jane, the eldest, asked their mother, Nancy Beaumont, for permission to visit the beach. Nancy, trusting Jane to watch over her siblings, agreed, giving her some money and walking them to the bus stop. She expected them to return by noon, but when they didn't arrive, she assumed they'd simply missed the bus. By mid-afternoon, Nancy's worry escalated, and after waiting at the bus stop for the children's return, she searched the beach herself. When neither the 2 p.m. nor the 3 p.m. buses brought them back, Nancy and her husband Jim reported their children missing, setting off one of Australia's largest manhunts. Police moved swiftly, blocking off Glenelg Beach and conducting thorough searches of the surrounding area. Nancy described the children's brightly colored clothes and the toys they'd brought, yet no traces were uncovered. While the possibility of an accident was considered, authorities increasingly suspected foul play. They wiretapped the Beaumont's phone in anticipation of a ransom demand, while local agencies searched all likely routes the children might have taken. Days turned into weeks, and fear mounted. Jim Beaumont became heavily involved, gathering evidence and questioning beachgoers, while Nancy, stricken with guilt and heartbreak, was repeatedly hospitalized. She would often pace the floor, whispering, "I lost all the children." Witnesses reported seeing the Beaumonts with an unknown man in his 30s, described as thin and dressed in blue swim trunks. He had apparently approached the children and later interacted with them as if they were acquainted. Some said that Jane was seen buying snacks and a meat pie using a 1-pound note, which puzzled Nancy since she'd only given Jane enough for the bus fare. The man's identity was never established, but his interactions with the children, described as warm and familiar, fueled suspicions of abduction. In the months following, a woman claimed she'd seen 3 children with a man near her home on the evening of the disappearance. She described an alarming scene. One child attempted to run, only to be restrained by the man. Unfortunately, police dismissed her account as a prank, and no other solid leads emerged. Desperate, the Beaumonts consulted a psychic named Gerard, who claimed he could locate the children's burial site. But his assistance proved deceptive. He frequently changed locations and planted items he insisted belonged to the children, which only compounded the family's pain. The trail eventually went cold, and over the years, police pursued various tips and even excavated sites based on new information. However, the mystery of the Beaumont children's disappearance has never been solved. Nancy Beaumont passed away in 2019, followed by Jim in 2023 at the age of 97, both going to their graves without ever learning the fate of their beloved children. Bible John is the nickname given to an unidentified serial killer believed to be responsible for the murders of 3 young women in Glasgow, Scotland, between 1968 and 1969. Each victim, aged between 25 and 32 with brown hair, met the killer at the Barrowland Ballroom, a bustling dance hall in Glasgow, where they spent their final hours before falling prey to his violence. The Bible John case triggered one of Scotland's largest and most intensive manhunts, marking a first in Scottish policing history, as authorities released a composite sketch of the suspect to the public. He earned the moniker Bible John because, during a conversation with his last known victim, he allegedly referenced Bible verses and condemned adultery, displaying a moralistic disdain for what he deemed sinful behavior. The investigation mobilized a massive team of over 100 detectives who worked full-time on the case, conducting more than 5,000 interviews. Yet despite this intensive effort, Bible John's true identity eluded capture. By 1972, the lead detective voiced his frustrations, expressing his belief that Bible John was likely a local resident of Glasgow or nearby. The suspect was described as between 25 and 30 years old, standing around 5'10" to 6 feet tall, with light red hair, blue-gray eyes, and a tidy, modern appearance. Although he referenced scripture, investigators doubted he was deeply religious, suggesting instead that he likely had a superficial familiarity with the Bible. Though they pursued many promising leads and suspect profiles, detectives were never able to conclusively identify Bible John. Planets are a theoretical category of exoplanets that orbit directly around black holes, much like planets orbit stars. These objects are believed to be massive enough to maintain a round shape under their own gravity. In 2019, researchers identified a safe zone around supermassive black holes where stable planetary orbits could theoretically exist, suggesting the possibility that thousands of such planets could form an orbit within this region. To add a bit more context, supermassive black hole is actually the precise term used to classify the largest known types of black holes. Most galaxies, including our own Milky Way, are thought to have a supermassive black hole at their center, around which the galaxy revolves. These colossal black holes typically range from 100,000 to several billion times the mass of our Sun. Bouvet Island, one of Earth's most isolated landmasses, sits nearly 1,000 miles from Antarctica and is blanketed almost entirely in ice. It was first discovered on January 1, 1739, by French explorer Jean-Baptiste Bouvet de Lozier, who mistakenly recorded its location, leading to the island's loss for the next 69 years. Multiple explorers searched for it without success until it was finally rediscovered in 1808. In 1964, Bouvet Island's eerie solitude was interrupted by a discovery that has fueled a decades-long mystery. A South African expedition, led by Lieutenant Commander Alan Crawford, landed on the island and discovered an abandoned lifeboat on its desolate shore. The boat, partially submerged in icy waters and surrounded by curious seals, had no visible markings to indicate its origin. Nearby were oars, a 44-gallon drum, and a copper flotation tank, all hinting at an attempt to land on the inhospitable island. Due to time constraints, Crawford and his team spent less than an hour on Bouvet Island and conducted only a cursory search. They found no evidence of human remains or any clues to the lifeboat's history. When a biological survey team arrived 2 years later in 1966, they studied the area around a small lagoon, yet they reported no sign of the lifeboat, which seemed to have mysteriously vanished without a trace. The origins of this lifeboat and the fate of those who might have used it remain unsolved. Theories range from it being a relic from a shipwreck to the possibility of clandestine military or research activities. Brittany Phillips was an 18-year-old from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who was found murdered in her apartment in 2004. She had been salted before her death, and her body was discovered by police 3 days later, after a friend who had checked on her reported a sense that something was amiss. Heartbreakingly, she was laid to rest on what would have been her 19th birthday. Despite ongoing investigations, no one has yet been charged with her murder. Recently, in 2023, new evidence emerged that may provide a clearer timeline of Brittany's last hours, potentially leading to new insights in this unsolved case and bringing her family closer to justice. The phenomenon known as cattle mutilation encompasses a series of mysterious and often unexplainable injuries and dissections primarily observed in cattle. Farmers sometimes find their livestock dead under puzzling conditions, though many of these deaths can be explained by natural causes such as disease or heart failure. However, there are numerous reports of livestock found with disturbingly precise mutilations that imply a more deliberate act. In such cases, cattle are found with specific body parts removed, such as an eye or certain patches of flesh, in a way that suggests these occurrences are not the work of natural predators. While a typical predator attack would leave a chaotic scene with scattered remains and visible blood, these cattle are discovered bloodless and with surgical precision. Eyes, tongues, ears, lips, and other parts removed in clean, bloodless incisions. In many instances, the cuts appear to have been cauterized, as if intense heat were applied to seal the wounds. Such findings have led some to speculate that individuals are harvesting these organs for purposes ranging from illicit trade to ritualistic ceremonies. When authorities examine these sites, they often find no signs of disturbed ground or struggle, which has led some to believe the animals may have been relocated to the area after death, leaving no trace of movement. This lack of disturbance has sparked theories that these animals may have been dropped from above, leading some to question whether extraterrestrials are involved. One case involved rancher Glenda Schneider, who found 2 of her horses mutilated in this manner. Another notable incident in Lancaster County, Nebraska, in June 1974, involved residents reporting helicopters with spotlights flying over fields just before mutilated cattle were found. When County Sheriff Herbert Thompson contacted the FAA and National Guard, both reported no flights in the area. Local tensions grew so high that ranchers formed patrols, leading the National Guard to caution pilots to avoid the area, as ranchers were prepared to fire on any suspicious aircraft. By May 1979, federal agencies initiated a comprehensive investigation called Operation Animal Mutilation, eventually managed by the FBI. This operation sought to determine the reliability of these reports, investigate possible causes, assess whether cattle mutilations posed a significant law enforcement challenge, establish the phenomenon's extent if deemed a threat, and recommend responses or a cessation of investigation if found irrelevant. Lead FBI investigator Kenneth Rommel estimated that as many as 10,000 cattle had been mutilated under peculiar circumstances by 1979. His findings concluded that most cases could be attributed to natural causes and predation, dismissing alien or supernatural explanations. Nevertheless, he admitted that certain anomalies resisted conventional explanations, and no perpetrators were ever identified. Veterinarians and scientists have proposed explanations based on natural causes, attributing the unusual features of these cases to dehydration, insect activity, and the effects of small scavengers. They argue that cases with missing eyes, lips, or organs may be due to parasites or small animals targeting areas with thinner skin. The lack of blood, they suggest, could result from insect feeding or simply the effects of desiccation under the sun. Even cuts that appear precise might result from postmortem bloating, causing the skin to stretch and split. Despite these scientific explanations, many remain convinced that human intervention is at play, with some speculating the involvement of cults or individuals with sinister motives. Charlie Chop-Off was the grim alias given to a serial killer linked to the brutal murders of 4 young boys in Manhattan between 1972 and 1973. His disturbing nickname came from the severe mutilations inflicted on his victims. In 1974, police apprehended a man named Erno Soto following a failed abduction attempt. While Soto confessed to one of the murders, he denied responsibility for the others. A surviving victim noted that Soto bore a resemblance to his attacker, but could not make a positive identification. Soto was known to be an intermittent patient at a mental hospital in Manhattan. Hospital staff initially asserted he was in their custody at the times of the murders, but they later conceded that Soto might have evaded supervision on multiple occasions. After his arrest, Soto was returned to the mental institution, and with the murders ceasing after his confinement, he remains the primary suspect. However, because of his mental health condition, it is unlikely he will ever face trial for the crimes. The case of Chip Campbell, a 36-year-old man from Florida who vanished in 2016. The last known sighting of Chip was captured on surveillance footage at a Circle K gas station, after which he seemed to vanish without a trace. Chip faced a difficult past, contending with depression, loneliness, and addiction, struggles largely rooted in a childhood marked by abandonment and loss. Those who knew him recall Chip as a gentle giant who tended to punish himself more than anyone else. In the gas station footage, Chip is seen heading to the restroom carrying 2 backpacks, but exits without them, an odd detail that would later deepen the mystery. Days later, on March 8th, Chip's roommate, Tina Rios, posted on Facebook asking if anyone had seen him. She found disturbing clues at home. His phone, with the battery removed, was left in the bathroom, the living room was in disarray, and Chip's insulin supplies lay scattered in the kitchen. A grave sign given his diabetes. The front door was wedged shut, the side door was open, and his dog, whom Chip never allowed loose, roamed freely in the house. Investigators later examined the gas station footage and found the contents of Chip's backpacks equally curious. One bag contained crucial documents like his EBT card, social security card, his father's birth certificate, blank bank deposit forms, and medical supplies, including a diabetic testing kit, a vial of insulin, and an asthma inhaler. The other bag held clothing, food, writing materials, a rope, and a steel blow dart. As suspicions grew, Chip's family turned their focus to his roommate, Tenna. She had an outstanding warrant in a nearby county, and after posting bail, Chip's family demanded she leave the house, which was owned by Chip's father, Reggie. Tenna resisted, claiming squatters' rights, but during this time, Chip's family discovered checks fraudulently written in Reggie's name, leaving his account drained. Tenna was eventually identified as the one forging the checks and was arrested. Upon re-entering the house, Chip's family found it in disrepair, littered with broken dishes, filthy and bent utensils, and signs of drug activity. Evidence suggested that the house had been used as a drug den for months, even while Chip lived there, and a makeshift meth lab was found in the attic. Despite these disturbing revelations, Chip's body has never been found, and Tenna was not charged in connection with his disappearance. Although Chip's family has since restored the home, the question of what happened to him remains unanswered. Whether he met with foul play, possibly to silence him about the drug and fraud activities in his home, or if he chose to disappear due to his personal struggles, is still uncertain. In 2000, Colleen Kenwood, a 53-year-old mother of two, vanished mysteriously in Florida, leaving no clues, note, or signs of foul play behind. At the time, Colleen was in a relationship with John Lee Paul, a former race driver and Wall Street investor with whom she had shared her dream of sailing around the world. Encouraging her aspirations, John invited Colleen to join him on his boat, the Island Girl. To make this trip possible, Colleen sold nearly all her belongings. On December 14th, Colleen spoke with a friend in Canada, mentioning she was at a bar in Key West with John and having a good time. This would be her last known contact, as she was never seen or heard from again. Her family later learned that John had a shadowy past. He had previously served 15 years in prison for running a drug smuggling ring and attempting to murder his business partner. Still on parole, his plans to sail around the world with Colleen were legally prohibited. Following Colleen's disappearance, John claimed they had separated in December and that he hadn't seen her since. However, between December and February, over $40,000 was withdrawn from Colleen's bank accounts in Fort Lauderdale by several unidentified women with no known ties to John. As the investigation progressed, authorities attempted to question John, only to discover that he too had disappeared. He had sailed out of town on his boat, violating his parole. Known for crossing the Atlantic multiple times, John's current location is unknown, leaving the mystery of Colleen's disappearance unsolved to this day. In 1974, the Cowden family, Richard, Belinda, and their children, David and Melissa, vanished from a campground in Oregon's Smoky Mountains. Belinda's mother first sensed something was wrong when she visited their campsite to check on them, only to find it eerily undisturbed. Meals were left out as if the family had just stepped away, and Richard's wallet and wristwatch were on the ground. Alarmed, she reported their disappearance to the police, sparking one of the largest search efforts in Oregon's history. 7 months later, the family's bodies were discovered 11 kilometers from the campsite, with evidence showing they had been fatally shot with .22 caliber bullets. Suspicion fell on Dwayne Lee Little, a convicted killer who had been on parole at the time of the Cowdens' disappearance. Investigators found that Little owned a .22 caliber gun and was known to have been in the area the same weekend the family vanished. However, with only circumstantial evidence, and Little already serving 3 life sentences, authorities never formally charged him in connection with the murders. Dennis Martin, a 6-year-old boy, disappeared in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park on June 14, 1969, just days before his 7th birthday. He was on a camping trip with his father, grandfather, older brother, and a family friend. That afternoon, Dennis and some other children were playing hide-and-seek in a grassy field near the Tennessee-North Carolina border. Their plan was to sneak up on the adults and surprise them, but while the other children returned, Dennis never reappeared. When Dennis failed to return, his father, Bill, quickly began searching, hoping Dennis's red shirt would stand out among the greenery. Bill hiked 2 miles into the forest before doubling back, assuming Dennis might still be near the camp. As dusk approached, Bill notified the National Park Service, launching a full-scale search. That evening, however, a heavy rainstorm hit, with 2.5 inches of rain falling and washing away potential tracks. The search for Dennis expanded rapidly, drawing in hundreds of volunteers, hiking clubs, Boy Scouts, helicopters, and canine units. Unfortunately, the large turnout of nearly 1,400 searchers may have trampled over crucial clues. Dense vegetation, high winds, and the challenging terrain made locating Dennis even more difficult. Despite the extensive search, which cost an estimated $50,000, now over $400,000, no trace of Dennis was ever found. There were a few leads. A small footprint found 3 miles from the campsite was thought to possibly be Dennis's, but yielded no further clues. One witness, Harold Key, reported seeing an unkempt man near the edge of the forest and hearing a scream that sounded like a child's. Another tip came from a hunter who claimed to have found a child's remains, but this was proven false. Speculation about Dennis's fate includes theories that he wandered deeper into the wilderness, succumbed to the elements, or was possibly abducted. The phrase, "the disciple whom Jesus loved," appears 6 times in the Gospel of John, but is absent from other New Testament accounts. Scholars and theologians have debated for centuries who this disciple might be, as the text never explicitly names them. Various theories suggest this could be John the Apostle, Lazarus, or even a symbolic reference rather than an actual individual. Despite these theories, the true identity of the beloved disciple remains one of the enduring mysteries in Christian scripture, with no definitive answer established to date. Dora Ruth Smith was a 47-year-old woman who mysteriously went missing in Alabama in 1977. Last seen in her home, she seemingly left in the middle of the night, leaving behind all of her belongings, including her dentures, purse, keys, and clothes, while wearing only a nightgown. Her husband claimed he saw her get into a lime green Ford car, which was never found or identified. In 2003, 26 years after her disappearance, new residents of Dora's old home discovered an envelope containing a letter and $200 in cash. The letter read, "They are trying to take my food away and kill me. Please help me," suggesting she may have been afraid for her life. This find raised suspicions of foul play, though no concrete evidence emerged. Police conducted searches with canine units, which led them to a specific area of the garden. Although the dogs detected a scent, digging in the area yielded no findings. Dora's family believes that the search might not have gone deep enough. In the summer of 2020, renowned streamer Dr. Disrespect, also known as Guy Beam, was unexpectedly and permanently banned from Twitch, creating a whirlwind of mystery and speculation. At the time, Dr. Disrespect was among Twitch's most popular personalities, having recently signed a multi-year exclusivity deal with the platform. However, the reason for his ban was never disclosed, leaving fans and industry insiders alike puzzled. Dr. Disrespect initially posted on Twitter, stating that Twitch had not informed him of any specific reason for the ban. In August 2020, he transitioned to streaming on YouTube. By 2021, he publicly announced that he had learned the reason for his ban, felt it was unjust, and was taking legal action against Twitch, claiming he had suffered significant financial losses due to the abrupt suspension. One prominent theory suggests that Twitch may have banned Dr. Disrespect to avoid fulfilling the terms of his costly exclusivity contract. Twitch had aggressively pursued exclusivity deals with top creators following Microsoft's Mixer platform, attracting high-profile streamers like Ninja and Shroud in 2019. However, Mixer's subsequent shutdown lessened competition in the streaming landscape, potentially reducing Twitch's need for such costly agreements. According to this theory, Twitch might have banned Dr. Disrespect as a way to sidestep the substantial payout without directly breaching their contract. The real reason behind Dr. Disrespect's ban remains undisclosed. The Dracula entry refers to a rumored lost Russian film from the 1920s, believed by some to be an early adaptation of Bram Stoker's classic 1897 novel Dracula. Allegedly directed by a figure named Viktor Tansky, information about the film is extremely scarce. There are no known plot details, cast lists, footage, or even still images to confirm its existence. If it were real, this adaptation would predate the well-known 1931 Dracula film by Universal Studios and even Nosferatu, 1922, making it a significant cinematic milestone. Some theorize the film, if it ever existed, may have been destroyed during the Russian Civil War, or simply never completed due to the disruptions in Russia's film industry during that time. Given the lack of evidence, however, the film's existence remains a mystery, leaving only speculation and legend. The origin of Earth's water has long intrigued scientists, resulting in several competing theories. The most widely accepted hypothesis suggests that asteroids delivered water locked in their mineral structures, which was released upon impact with the young Earth. The possibility that some water originated from the solar nebula, the vast rotating disk of dust and gas surrounding the early sun. This nebula likely contributed key elements, including hydrogen and nitrogen, that are essential for forming water. Critics of the asteroid and comet theory note that other planets also experienced heavy bombardments, yet do not have abundant liquid water like Earth. Earth's unique ability to retain liquid water results from its favorable combination of factors: a strong magnetosphere, an optimal distance from the sun, and sufficient gravitational pull. These characteristics distinguish Earth from planets like Mercury, which is too close to the sun and too hot, and Mars, which lacks enough iron to sustain a robust magnetosphere. Without a strong magnetic field, Mars has a thinner atmosphere that is less capable of retaining water, which exists only in minimal amounts on its surface. The East Bay rock walls are a series of mysterious stone walls scattered across California, primarily near the San Francisco area. Unlike traditional walls or fences, these walls are discontinuous and don't reach significant heights, so they likely weren't used for enclosure or security. Some theories suggest that they might have been built as markers for travelers or as barriers for rounding up animals, but there's no documented purpose or creator. Recent dating efforts indicate these walls were likely constructed between 1850 and 1880, coinciding with early American California. Despite this, there's no clear consensus on whether they were built by European settlers, Native Americans, Mexicans, or another group, and their true origin and purpose remain a mystery. On December 26, 1900, a relief crew arrived at the Flannan Islands off Scotland's coast, heading specifically to Island Moor to resupply the lighthouse and rotate one of its 3 keepers. Known for its eerie reputation, Island Moor was an island local shepherds avoided overnight due to tales of malevolent spirits. As the crew neared the shore, they saw no sign of the keepers, a troubling sight as they were expected to be there. The lighthouse looked abandoned, with an unmaintained dock and no one to greet them. Captain James Harvey, along with replacement keeper Joseph Moore, signaled their arrival with the ship's horn, but silence met them. Moore went ashore, reportedly filled with a sense of dread as he climbed the steps to the lighthouse. Inside, he found unsettling clues. The door was unlocked, an oilskin coat was left behind, half-eaten food sat on the table, and a chair lay overturned. The beds were unmade, and there was no trace of the 3 keepers, Duquette, Marshall, and MacArthur. Harvey quickly telegraphed the mainland, reporting the mystery of the vanished men. Further inspection confirmed the lighthouse's abandoned state, with no bodies found during a search. Adding to the enigma, the logbooks provided eerie details. Assistant keeper Thomas Marshall recorded an unusually fierce storm on December 12th, more intense than anything he'd seen in over 20 years at sea. Principal keeper Duquette had reportedly fallen silent, while MacArthur, a tough character, had begun to cry inexplicably. The entries from December 13th described the men fearing for their lives, praying together, despite being 150 feet above sea level, in a solid lighthouse. Yet, according to mainland weather records, no storms were reported in the area at that time. The final entry, dated December 15th, read, "Storm ended, sea calm, and God is over all." The strange details baffled those on the mainland, who insisted no storms had occurred during that period. Theories quickly surfaced. One suggested a rogue wave might have swept the men away while they attempted to retrieve ropes that had fallen from a crane. Another proposed that the logbooks were fabricated, given the lack of storm records. Over time, subsequent lighthouse keepers claimed to hear voices calling the names of the missing men. Einstein's last words refers to the mystery surrounding Albert Einstein's final moments. As he lay dying, he reportedly uttered a few words, or perhaps a sentence in German. However, the nurse attending him was unable to understand him, as she did not speak German. This has left Einstein's last words unknown, and his final thoughts remain a mystery. Whether he was speaking to himself, sharing a profound insight, or simply expressing a personal sentiment, whatever he said in those last moments is lost to history. The Eloko, with their plural form known as Biloko, are depicted as sinister, dwarf-like beings inhabiting the dense rainforests of the Congo. Fiercely territorial and jealous, these spirits are believed to guard the forest's precious resources, such as wild game and rare fruits, but sustain themselves exclusively on human flesh. Biloko are described as hairless, with penetrating eyes, sharp claws, and bodies covered only by leaves and grass. Legend attributes mystical powers to the Biloko, particularly through the use of small bells that cast spells over unsuspecting travelers. According to local belief, carrying an amulet may protect against these enchantments, serving as a safeguard for those who venture into their domain. One well-known story, shared by Jan Napper, tells of a hunter who brought his wife to his hut deep within the forest. He warned her not to respond to the sound of any bell, but despite this, she found herself inexplicably drawn to the sound. When she opened the door, she encountered an eloko, which appeared small and harmless. Declining her offer of food, the creature demanded human flesh instead. Under its spell, she ultimately sacrificed herself. When her husband returned, he found only her bones. The June 16, 1991 United Bank Tower robbery in Denver, Colorado, now known as the Wells Fargo Center, has remained an unsolved mystery. At 8:59 a.m., Robert Bardwell, the bank's vice president, arrived and called for a guard to unlock the door. Guard William Pulm Jr. responded, but upon reaching the elevator, he was met not by Bardwell, but an unidentified armed man. The man, estimated to be in his 50s or 60s, forced William to escort him to the sub-basement, where he then shot and concealed his body, taking his access card. The gunman continued through the basement, killing 3 more guards, Philip Manoff, Scott McCarthy, and Todd Wilson, with exceptional precision, firing 18 shots and missing only once. He destroyed security footage, took various security tapes, a radio, and some guard logbook pages to erase evidence. The robber then accessed the vault, holding 6 tellers at gunpoint, but sparing their lives, forcing them to fill a bag with $200,000 before locking them in a man-trap room. Eyewitnesses described the gunman as neatly dressed in a gray sport coat, bluish-gray slacks, mirrored sunglasses, a brown fedora, and a distinct bandage on his left cheek. Investigators were perplexed by several factors. Why he only took $200,000 when over $2 million was accessible, why he spared the tellers while violently killing unarmed guards, and his knowledge of security procedures. Suspicion eventually fell on James King, a former Denver police officer and ex-security guard at the bank. King was struggling with debt, having accumulated over $225,000 in credit card bills. Police searched his home and found a map labeled "Plans for the Bank," along with 5 fake IDs, though the court ruled these items insufficient for a conviction, as they hadn't been used criminally. King's odd behavior before and after the heist, shaving his facial hair and purchasing a deposit box, added to suspicions, and 5 of 6 tellers later identified him as resembling the robber. However, without hard evidence or the stolen money, King was acquitted. Prosecutors speculated that the robbery might have been a cover for a targeted attack on the guards, rather than a money-driven crime, which could explain the limited amount stolen and the intense violence directed at the guards. Despite extensive investigation, including FBI involvement, no definitive answers have emerged. leaving the United Bank Tower robbery a haunting case still unsolved over 3 decades later. In 2001, a woman named Judy and her friend witnessed a strange phenomenon on Highway 36 in Kansas, which they later dubbed the flying mist mattress. As they were driving, a large rectangular mist drifted across the road in front of them. Judy described the mist as wider than her car, about 2 feet thick, and hovering roughly 3 feet above the ground. The occurrence remains unexplained, though theories range from ghosts or aliens to a covert government experiment, or perhaps just an unusual weather event. In 1914, a woman named Frances Marshall was brutally murdered in New Zealand. She disappeared after visiting a friend one evening, and by morning, her husband learned that she had been found dead. Her body was discovered in an alleyway with 25 wounds inflicted on her head, neck, and chest. Her skull was fractured, and her heart and lungs had been repeatedly stabbed, leading to a fatal loss of blood. Strangely, there was no evidence of a struggle, theft, or any signs of disturbance, suggesting she may have been taken by surprise. When found, Frances was wearing only one glove, yet her hat remained on her head. Few details are available about this case, but it stands as one of New Zealand's most horrific unsolved murders since the First World War. This chilling account dates back to the 1980s, involving a photograph taken at the Grand Canyon, and quickly became a popular topic on YouTube and Reddit, sparking endless theories. According to the story, the Reddit user's uncle, then around 50 years old, took a trip to the Grand Canyon with friends. At one point, they pulled over to stretch by a spot surrounded by dense hedges, and as tourists do, they decided to take some photos. The uncle posed at the canyon's edge, with a friend snapping a photo of him holding a fishing rod, although later details clarified that the fishing rod might have been a memory error. When the friends returned from their trip, they developed the film, and what they saw was unsettling. Standing directly behind the uncle was a tall, pale figure in a black robe, looking straight into the camera. Neither the uncle nor his friends remembered seeing anyone else nearby during their 15-minute stop, which only deepened the mystery. The Reddit user posted the story years later, adding the photo, which added to the intrigue and fueled various theories. The story's reach led many Reddit users to share their own ideas on the figure's identity. Some thought it was simply a random person who coincidentally appeared in the photo, while others suggested that the entire story was fabricated for dramatic effect. One popular theory argued that the figure's position made him appear unusually tall, while some imagined that this figure was a Grim Reaper-like entity, appearing as a premonition or an omen for someone in the group who had a near-death experience. More skeptical readers chalked the tale up to internet sensationalism. However, a darker line of speculation emerged, suggesting that the mysterious robed figure might have planned to harm the uncle, possibly pushing him off the cliff, but stopped upon noticing the group taking photos. Although deaths from falls are statistically rare at the Grand Canyon, about 1 in 1.8 million, they do occur. The leading cause of death in the canyon is from airplane and helicopter accidents, but intentional acts have also happened there, such as in 1993 when Robert Spangler infamously pushed his third wife off a cliff. Others imagine that the robed figure was a troubled individual, perhaps intending to take his own life, but stumbling upon the group instead. The Frog Boys were a group of 5 boys in South Korea, aged 9 to 13, who went missing in 1991 while searching for salamander eggs during a public holiday. In response to their disappearance, the South Korean president ordered an extensive search by police and military forces. But tragically, the boys were not found until 2002, 11 years later. Their remains were discovered near the area where they had initially gone missing, and evidence showed signs of blunt force trauma, indicating they were likely attacked. To this day, no one has been charged for these horrific murders, and the motives remain a mystery. There was also a 6th boy who had joined the group that day, but returned home after his mother cautioned him not to wander too far, a decision that ultimately saved his life and has likely stayed with him ever since. In 1943, 14-year-old Gloria Sullivan was tragically murdered. Gloria had faced a difficult early life after being abandoned by her parents and later raised in foster care. Her foster mother had passed away a few years before, leaving Gloria alone most days to handle household chores, cooking, cleaning, and schoolwork, while her foster father, Patrick, was at work. Despite her hardships, Gloria was said to be highly capable and deeply loved by Patrick, who cared for her as if she were his own daughter. On the day of her murder, several neighbors stopped by, either to chat or to return borrowed items, and none reported anything unusual. Around 10:20 a.m., Dorothy Wedig, one of Gloria's classmates, arrived for a planned shopping trip, but the house appeared locked from the inside, with curtains drawn and no response to her knocks, so she left. Later that day, Patrick returned to find the front door unlocked and the radio blaring at full volume. Entering the kitchen, he found Gloria lying on the floor, having been stabbed 20 times in the back, chest, and throat. She was fully dressed, with no signs of assault, and the house was in perfect order, with nothing stolen. Friends and neighbors struggled to understand who would want to harm Gloria, as she had no known enemies or romantic interests. Investigators briefly suspected her biological father, but he had disappeared without a trace, and was eventually declared legally dead in 1950. Devastated, Patrick frequently visited the police station, hoping for updates, but no new leads emerged. Patrick passed away just 4 years later from a heart attack at age 59, never having seen justice for his beloved foster daughter. Although investigators found some blood evidence at the scene, the identity of Gloria's killer remains unknown, leaving this brutal, senseless crime unsolved. The Godard family disappearance is one of France's most puzzling missing persons cases, involving Dr. Yves Godard and his 2 children, Camille and Marius. In early September 1999, Yves, a respected doctor from Saan, rented a sailboat, the Nick, from Saint-Malo and set off with his children. His wife, Marie-France Godard, was notably absent and was last seen days earlier, sparking concerns. On September 5th, the Nick was found abandoned off the coast, revealing blood traces on board, some of which matched Marie-France's blood type, raising suspicions of foul play. As investigators looked into the family's background, they uncovered that Yves was involved in financial troubles, including debts, as well as marital difficulties. Authorities started to consider whether he might have killed his wife and fled with the children. In the days following their departure, witnesses reported seeing Yves and the children at various coastal locations, suggesting a possible attempt at escaping detection. The investigation took a tragic turn when items from the boat, including a dinghy and personal belongings, washed ashore. In the following years, skull fragments identified as Camille's and additional skeletal remains linked to Yves were discovered in the waters near Brittany, strengthening the theory that they had drowned. However, the mystery remains unsolved because the circumstances around Marie-France's death and the reason behind their voyage are still unclear. Despite extensive searches, no conclusive evidence ever determined exactly what happened to the Godards, leading to enduring speculation and various theories. In 1977, 26-year-old Gordon Sanderson was found shot to death in a septic tank in Alberta. Initially, his identity remained unknown until 2021, when testing revealed he was Gordon Sanderson, an Indigenous man. His body had been wrapped in a yellow bedsheet and bound with nylon rope. Evidence showed that Gordon had endured severe torture before his death. He was beaten, restrained, burned with a torch and cigarettes, and had parts of his body mutilated with a sharp object. Finally, he was shot multiple times in the head and chest before his body was discarded in the septic tank. With minimal evidence available, the investigation quickly went cold, and his case remains unsolved. Granger Taylor, a 32-year-old man from British Columbia, vanished in 1980 under circumstances as strange as his lifelong fascination with aliens. Known for his interest in extraterrestrial life, Granger often spoke about alien contact and even constructed a life-sized spaceship with a friend using parts from old satellite dishes. On the day of his disappearance, his stepfather found an unsettling note taped to his bedroom door. On the back was a hand-drawn map of a local mountain, while the front read, "Dear Mother and Father, I have gone away to board an alien spaceship, as recurring dreams assured a 42-month interstellar voyage to explore the vast universe and then return." I'm leaving behind all my possessions, as I no longer require them. Please use the instructions in my will as a guide. Love, Granger." In the months before he disappeared, Granger had made odd changes to his will, crossing out the word funeral and replacing death with departure. Despite extensive searches, no trace of him was found, until 6 years later when human bones and a shirt were discovered on a nearby mountain, believed to be Granger's remains. Based on this discovery, authorities closed the case, concluding he likely died near the mountain shortly after leaving. However, friends and family remained skeptical. They speculated on other possibilities. Some believed he had been abducted by the government for his knowledge of aliens. Others thought he may have been murdered with a cover-up staged, while a few still held that Granger had genuinely departed on an interstellar journey. The Grassman is a large, humanoid creature resembling Bigfoot, believed to inhabit the forests of Ohio. However, unlike Bigfoot, the Grassman is reportedly much more aggressive. The name Grassman comes from sightings where people claim to have found huts woven from tall grass, thought to be built by the creature. The first major recorded sighting took place in Minerva, Ohio, in August 1978. During this encounter, some children staying with their grandparents were playing in the woods when they suddenly ran back to the house, terrified, describing a tall, hairy monster. Curious, the grandparents went outside to investigate, and to their surprise, they saw the Grassman, a massive creature covered in dark, matted hair, digging through their trash. The couple estimated it weighed over 300 pounds. In the following days, the grandparents reported encountering the creature a few more times. On the third encounter, they recalled a disturbing event. Just days before the initial sighting, their German Shepherd had been found dead with its neck broken. The couple began to suspect the Grassman might be responsible. Additionally, there are Native American legends dating back to the 1700s that describe a race of ape-like beings known as the Wild Ones of the Woods. These tales recount attempts to coexist peacefully by offering the creatures food and other resources. The Hinterkaifeck Murders remain one of the most chilling and unsolved cases in German history, with eerie events beginning 6 months before the tragedy. Strange occurrences unsettled the family. The maid quit, claiming she heard terrifying sounds coming from the attic, though the family dismissed her fears. Around the same time, they found an unfamiliar newspaper on the property. Odd, as no one in the family or nearby village subscribed to it. Just days before the murders, footprints appeared in the snow leading to the machine room door, where a lock was found broken. Andreas Gruber, the family patriarch, reported hearing footsteps in the attic one night, yet found nothing unusual when he checked. Though he confided in neighbors about these incidents, Andreas refused help from both neighbors and the police. On March 31st, a new maid arrived at the Hinterkaifeck farm, but her first evening turned out to be her last. That night, Andreas, his wife, their daughter Victoria, and her young daughter were each lured one by one to the barn, where they were brutally murdered. The killer then entered the house and killed Victoria's young son and the new maid in their rooms. Evidence suggested the attacker used a pickaxe from the farm to carry out the murders. In a disturbing twist, the killer reportedly stayed on the property for the next 3 days, feeding the livestock and consuming the family's bread supply. 4 days later, neighbors discovered the bodies. Authorities launched a thorough investigation, interviewing a wide range of suspects: local laborers, handymen, travelers, merchants, and even Romani people in the area. One theory proposed that Victoria's husband, believed to have died in World War I, might have survived and returned to exact revenge, though no evidence supported this possibility. Despite their efforts, investigators found no conclusive leads or suspects. The mystery of the Hinterkaifeck murders remained unsolved when the case was officially closed in 1955. In May 2013, Jason Ellis, a police officer, was tragically killed in Bardstown, Kentucky. While driving home, Ellis stopped to remove some tree branches blocking the road. As he stepped out of his car to clear the way, he was ambushed and fatally shot by an unknown attacker, who then left him at the scene. When Ellis's body was discovered, it ignited a massive investigation. However, despite extensive efforts, his murder remains unsolved, and no arrests have been made to date. This incident is part of a string of unusual and violent events that occurred in Bardstown, a small, otherwise quiet town. Over a span of about 10 years, Bardstown saw a disturbing rise in violent crimes, including several murders, attacks, and disappearances. Some of these cases were solved, while others remain mysteries. While there are potential links between certain cases, suggesting they could be connected across different families, it's also possible these crimes are coincidental. The Jeff Davis 8 refers to 8 unsolved murders of women from Jefferson Davis Parish, Louisiana. The victims, Loretta Lewis, Ernestine Patterson, Kristen Lopez, Whitney Du Bois, Laconia Brown, Crystal Zeno, Brittany Gary, and Nicole Guillory, were all identified, though to determine exact causes of death proved challenging due to significant decomposition. Aged between 17 and 30, these women shared troubled backgrounds, often marked by struggles with mental health, drug use, and sex work. All had also served as police informants, providing information on local drug activities. 2 victims, Patterson and Brown, showed clear signs of throat injuries, adding to the suspicion that foul play was involved. Most of the women knew each other. Kristen Lopez and Brittany Gary were cousins. Brittany had lived with Crystal Zeno, and Whitney Du Bois had a child with Loretta Lewis's brother-in-law. This web of connections fueled theories that a local gang or other figures targeted the women for sharing information. The case became more complex, with connections to other local incidents. For instance, Kristen Lopez was present at a police-involved shooting of Leonard Crochet, a man with a history of criminal activity. Frankie Richard, a local strip club owner entangled in illegal dealings, emerged as a suspect. He admitted to relationships with several of the victims and was reportedly the last person seen with Kristen Lopez. However, charges against him were dropped due to evidence mishandling and conflicting testimonies. Another suspect, Lawrence Nixon, was implicated in Patterson's murder when his wife reported seeing him with a large trash bag leaking a red substance she assumed was blood. Yet, when authorities finally investigated 15 months later, no evidence remained. Such delays fueled public suspicion of police corruption. Warren Gary, the chief criminal investigator, further stirred controversy after buying a truck seen at the location of Kristen Lopez's death. Purchased from an associate of Frankie Richard, Gary resold it for profit without testing it for evidence. Though fined by the ethics board, he was later promoted to head of evidence, amplifying suspicions of law enforcement interference. In 2016, Gary's life took a tragic turn when he was shot in his sleep by his grandson. Frankie Richard's death in 2020, under unclear circumstances suspected to involve suicide or foul play, added yet another layer to the saga. These deaths, coupled with accusations of law enforcement corruption, have led many to believe that the case of the Jeff Davis 8 is steeped in police interference, with justice remaining elusive due to possible collusion and cover-up. In 2004, Jim Donnelly, a scientist at Auckland's Glenbrook Steel Mill, vanished under circumstances that remain baffling to this day. On the morning of his disappearance, Donnelly followed his usual routine, leaving home for work and arriving at the mill, where he was seen parking his car and entering the building. Witnesses even observed him heading to his office, but from that moment onward, he seemed to vanish without a trace. In the weeks before he went missing, Donnelly had displayed increasingly anxious and peculiar behavior. He mentioned to his wife that he had important meetings lined up and anticipated feeling both physically and mentally exhausted afterward. This worried her, particularly since he never disclosed who the meetings were with or what they entailed. As the search for Donnelly commenced, authorities were unable to locate him or uncover any clear evidence of what happened, except for his hard hat, which was found near an acid vat in the mill. This discovery sparked a theory that he might have accidentally fallen into the vat. The authorities drained it and found a few of his belongings: his work ID, safety glasses, tablet, credit card, cash, and a single work key. Notably, his car and house keys were missing, and most perplexing of all, there were no human remains in the vat. The strange placement of his personal items led to multiple theories about his fate. One theory suggests that he may have been kidnapped or murdered by someone at the mill. Another posits that he might have staged his own disappearance, possibly to escape an unknown threat or involvement hinted at by his mysterious meetings. In this scenario, placing his belongings in the acid vat could have been an attempt by Donnelly or by someone else to fabricate a tragic accident. Alternatively, if he was killed, it's possible his items were discarded in the vat to destroy evidence. Whether Donnelly was the victim of foul play, orchestrated his own disappearance, or met with a fatal accident remains unknown. The Kentucky Meat Shower is the name given to an unusual event that occurred in 1876 when chunks of red meat fell from the sky for several minutes between 11 a.m. and noon in Bath County, Kentucky. The mysterious meat pieces, each roughly 2 inches by 2 inches, puzzled residents and sparked various theories about their origin. The most widely accepted explanation is known as the vulture theory. This theory proposes that a flock of vultures, suddenly startled mid-flight, regurgitated their recent meal, resulting in chunks of meat raining down. Since vultures are scavengers, this meat could have come from an animal carcass they had recently eaten, making it plausible as the source of the strange phenomenon. In an odd twist, some of the witnesses actually tasted the fallen meat to try and identify it. Though it was initially thought to resemble beef, 2 men who sampled it suggested it tasted more like lamb or deer. In early March 2022, the so-called Killing Stone, or Sessho-seki, mysteriously split in half in Nasu, Japan, located about 100 miles north of Tokyo. This volcanic stone has a long-standing legend attached to it, linked to the story of Tamamo no Mae, a beautiful woman who, according to mythology, was actually a 9-tailed fox spirit with sinister intentions. About 1,000 years ago, she reportedly planned to assassinate Emperor Toba, who reigned from 1107 to 1123. Some versions of the tale suggest she succeeded in poisoning him, while others say she was stopped before she could carry out her plot. When her true identity was discovered, she tried to flee, only to be wounded and transformed into stone, becoming the Sessho-seki. The stone was said to emit toxic gas, contributing to its deadly reputation, which some attributed to the volcanic activity in the area that sometimes resulted in nearby animal deaths. This deadly aura and its location near volcanic gases likely reinforced the myth of its lethality. Legend has it that touching the stone would bring death, and it was believed that Tamamo no Mae's spirit remained trapped inside it. With the stone's sudden split in 2022, people have taken varied interpretations. Some view it as a bad omen, fearing that the fox spirit may have been released. Others, however, see it as a positive sign, believing that the spirit's release could lead to positive change or blessings. King Ludwig II of Bavaria, who reigned from 1864 to 1886, earned the nickname the Mad King due to his intense fascination with grand architecture and the arts. Ludwig invested much of his personal fortune and considerable loans into creating lavish castles and palaces, most famously Neuschwanstein Castle. His ministers disapproved of these expenditures, ultimately using them as grounds to declare him insane. On June 12, 1886, Ludwig was taken into custody and removed from power. However, just 1 day later, he and his personal doctor, Dr. Gudden, were found dead in shallow waters. While the deaths were swiftly labeled aside, the official account quickly drew skepticism. Ludwig's body showed no signs of drowning, with no water found in his lungs, and both he and Dr. Gudden appeared to have head injuries and signs of strangulation. Local accounts, including one from a fisherman, even suggested they were shot by unknown attackers. This fueled conspiracy theories that Ludwig's dethronement was part of a larger power struggle. Notably, his brother Otto, who succeeded him, also struggled with mental health issues and was later removed from the throne, transferring power to their uncle's lineage. The true story behind Ludwig's mysterious death remains shrouded in mystery, obscured by political maneuvering and the passage of time. To this day, historians and enthusiasts continue to debate and speculate on the actual cause of his untimely demise. In 2007, 16-year-old Courtney Kuykendall from Washington became the focus of a strange and terrifying phone stalking ordeal. It began when her friends started receiving texts from her number containing the word gay, though Courtney herself had sent no messages. Soon after, Courtney, her family, and her friends began to receive a barrage of disturbing, violent messages, allegedly from Courtney's own number. These messages were relentless, filled with threats of murder, assault, and stalking, and arrived at all hours. Attempts to end the harassment proved futile. Turning off their phones, changing numbers, and even switching service providers failed to make a difference. The stalkers' access seemed eerily omniscient. Ringtones would change on their own, and phones would call each other without anyone touching them. Most unsettling of all, after the family installed a security camera, they received a call revealing knowledge of the camera's code. In one instance, while Courtney's mother was cutting limes in the kitchen, a call came through, taunting her by saying they preferred lemons. The police and the phone company were stumped, unable to trace the harassment or explain how it was happening, as no known technology could account for this level of intrusion. Then, just as mysteriously as they had started, the calls and texts suddenly stopped, leaving the Kuykendall family and their community with an unsolved mystery that endures to this day. L'inconnue de la Seine, or the unknown woman of the Seine, was the name given to an unidentified young woman found in the Seine River in Paris sometime in the late 1880s. Her death appeared to involve no violence, and her lifeless expression was strangely serene. The pathologist who examined her was reportedly captivated by her beauty, to the point that he felt compelled to create a wax plaster cast of her face. The effect of her calm expression led some to question whether she had actually drowned, as her features looked unusually peaceful, almost as if she had died in contentment. This plaster cast would go on to have a curious legacy in the art world. During the Bohemian period in Paris, her face became a widely recognized symbol of morbid beauty, gracing the walls of studios and homes alike. She was frequently compared to iconic artworks like the Mona Lisa, gaining fame as a haunting yet serene figure that fascinated artists, writers, and poets. Though many have found her mysterious visage unsettling, others view it as a beautiful and timeless reminder of an unsolved mystery. Her identity has never been uncovered, but her image remains etched in history as both an eerie and beautiful enigma. Lars Mittank, a 28-year-old German man, disappeared under baffling circumstances in Bulgaria in 2014. His troubles began after a bar fight allegedly erupted over a football disagreement, leaving him with injuries including a fractured jaw and a ruptured eardrum. A doctor advised Lars to delay his flight home to avoid worsening his condition and prescribed cefprozil, an antibiotic often used for ear infections. Due to his condition, his friends returned to Germany without him, leaving Lars alone in Bulgaria to recover. In the following days, Lars began acting strangely. He called his mother, speaking in a whisper and claiming he was in danger, insisting that people were trying to kill him and urging her to cancel his credit cards. Surveillance footage from his hotel captured him pacing hallways late at night, peering out windows, and hiding in elevators, all signs of someone deeply paranoid and fearful. Later, he told his mother that his pursuers were closing in. On his planned departure day, Lars went to the airport to consult a doctor. The doctor noted his unusual anxiety, but cleared him to fly. However, during the visit, Lars became visibly distressed, exclaiming, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." He abruptly fled the doctor's office, leaving behind his luggage, phone, wallet, and passport. CCTV captured him running out of the terminal and toward a nearby forest, where he vanished without a trace. Extensive searches have yet to uncover any sign of him. Friends and family described Lars as a sociable and grounded individual with no known mental health issues. However, cefprozil, the antibiotic he was prescribed, is known to have rare side effects that can include paranoia, delusions, and psychotic symptoms, leading some to believe that the medication may have triggered his extreme paranoia. Others suggest Lars may have narrowly escaped a plot to harm or traffic him, one he suspected but could not confirm. His mother remains hopeful, imagining he might be alive somewhere with amnesia, and there have been unconfirmed sightings of a man resembling Lars across Europe, a hitchhiker with long hair and a beard. Despite these reports, Lars remains officially missing, last seen sprinting into the forest beyond the airport. Madeleine McCann's disappearance stands as one of the most widely recognized and heavily funded missing person cases in recent history. On May 3, 2007, while on vacation in Portugal, the McCann family's evening took a tragic turn. Around 8 p.m., parents Kate and Jerry McCann put their 3 young children to bed in their holiday apartment and then joined friends at a nearby restaurant just 200 feet away. Throughout the evening, the adults took turns checking on the children, but when Kate returned around 10 p.m., she found that Madeline was missing. This devastating discovery led to an intensive search operation, but despite exhaustive efforts, no solid leads emerged to explain Madeline's fate. Over the years, a multitude of theories have been proposed, though none have provided clear answers. At one point, Portuguese authorities explored the theory that Madeline's parents may have accidentally caused her death and then staged an abduction, a claim they have vehemently denied. Another, equally shocking theory suggested the McCanns might have been involved in human trafficking, though this allegation was widely condemned as extreme and implausible. Other theories involve a possible abduction by a stranger, potentially linked to trafficking or foul play. In recent years, a convicted sex offender emerged as a person of interest due to potential connections to Madeline's disappearance, sparking new hope for answers. However, this investigation has yet to yield any substantial breakthroughs. 16 years after that fateful night, the case remains open but largely cold, with few signs suggesting a positive resolution. While some continue to hold on to the hope that Madeline may be alive somewhere, the events of that night remain an agonizing mystery for her family and the public alike. The Mary Celeste was an American merchant ship discovered adrift and abandoned in the Atlantic Ocean near the Azores Islands in 1872. Though the vessel had sustained minor damage, it was still seaworthy. Strangely, the ship's lifeboat was missing, yet ample provisions remained on board, including a full cargo of alcohol. The ship's logs revealed that the last entry had been recorded 10 days earlier, and remarkably, the personal effects of the captain and crew were still undisturbed. No trace of the captain or crew was ever found, sparking intense speculation over what might have happened. Theories about the ship's abandonment have ranged widely, from piracy and mutiny to accidents and supernatural occurrences. However, the undisturbed cargo and belongings made piracy an unlikely explanation, as thieves would typically loot valuable goods. Despite the variety of explanations, no evidence has definitively proven any one scenario. One interesting aspect of the Mary Celeste case involves a maritime law concept known as a salvage award. This is a reward given to anyone who finds and brings a stranded ship, along with its cargo or crew, to safety, typically ranging from 5% to 25% of the vessel's and cargo's value. This reward incentivizes rescuers to take on the risks involved in salvaging lost ships. However, in this case, the salvage reward was notably smaller than usual, as officials suspected foul play or even insurance fraud due to the peculiar circumstances surrounding the vessel's abandonment. To this day, the fate of the Mary Celeste crew remains one of history's enduring mysteries, with no concrete answers as to what truly happened to them. The Mean Girls DS game refers to a lost, unreleased video game adaptation of the popular teen comedy film Mean Girls. This game was reportedly fully developed, produced, and even scheduled for release. In Europe, it was set to launch on September 11, 2009, with a later US release date of April 20, 2010. Yet, for reasons that remain unknown, both launches were canceled at the last moment, and no physical or digital copies were ever officially made available. In 2021, however, a YouTuber known as Ray Mona claimed to have obtained a copy of this elusive game through undisclosed sources. She shared gameplay footage on her channel, giving fans a rare look at the game's contents. According to Ray Mona, a critical bug appeared early in the gameplay, causing the game to crash after the first minigame, effectively rendering it unplayable beyond that point. Due to an ongoing legal dispute, she has been unable to release the game for public access. Melonheads are legendary creatures described as small in stature with unusually large, swollen heads. These beings are said to be reclusive, typically hiding from humans, but occasionally lunging out to surprise or attack unsuspecting passersby. The most frequent sightings of melonheads come from Michigan, Connecticut, and Ohio, with variations on the story depending on the location. In Michigan, the legend of the melonheads centers around the area of Felt Mansion. Here, the story goes that the melonheads were once children who suffered from hydrocephalus, a condition that causes an abnormal buildup of fluid in the brain, leading to an enlarged head. These children were allegedly subjected to horrific abuse and neglect, leading them to retreat into the forest, where they became wild and aggressive. A local doctor, rumored to be the primary abuser, was eventually killed by the melonheads, who then dismembered his body and scattered the remains around Felt Mansion to conceal their act of vengeance. Ohio's version is similar but includes a sinister character known as Dr. Crow. According to this variation, Dr. Crow was a reclusive figure who conducted disturbing experiments on orphaned children, altering their appearances and creating the melonheads with large hairless heads and twisted bodies. In the tale, the children eventually broke free, killed Dr. Crow, and now roam the forest. Some versions of the story even suggest that these creatures have taken to feeding on babies, adding a macabre twist to the legend. The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 on March 8, 2014, remains one of aviation's most perplexing mysteries. The Boeing 777, carrying 239 passengers and crew, vanished en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, sparking a search that captivated global attention and stretched across vast swaths of ocean and land. Voice contact was lost about an hour after takeoff over the South China Sea. Shortly after, the plane's communication systems, including the transponder, were manually disabled, suggesting someone on board may have deliberately taken control. For the next hour, MH370 veered off course, disappearing from radar and prompting an intensive search effort. Initial searches focused on the planned flight path, but when no evidence surfaced, attention turned westward as satellite data detected pings suggesting the plane might have flown off course over the Indian Ocean. Investigators narrowed down potential flight paths based on the satellite pings: a route toward southern Indonesia, a path northward toward Russia or Kazakhstan, or a straight line southward over the Indian Ocean. Ultimately, most experts suspect the latter scenario, that the plane continued flying until it ran out of fuel and crashed somewhere in the remote Indian Ocean. Theories abound regarding the cause of the plane's disappearance. One posits that the captain may have intentionally crashed the plane, though his family denies any suggestion of mental health struggles. Another suggests a possible accidental military shoot-down by a nearby nation, potentially covered up afterward. A third theory contemplates a hijacking, with the plane diverted to a remote location, possibly Kazakhstan. Debris from MH370 has washed up on beaches around the Indian Ocean, providing clues but no conclusive answers. Despite the extensive searches and multiple theories, the full story of MH370 remains shrouded in mystery, with families and investigators still awaiting closure. The Penn Station shootings of 1983 are a bizarre and disturbing case involving a series of seemingly random attacks in New York City. Between April 1983 and early 1984, an unknown assailant with a .25 caliber handgun targeted individuals around Penn Station. 7 people were shot with only one fatality. Despite extensive investigations, including thousands of interviews, background checks, and comparisons to other cases from the late 70s and early 80s, the shooter was never identified. The shootings seemed to occur on a loose monthly schedule. The first victim, a homeless woman, was shot while sleeping. She survived the injury to her hip. In the following months, other individuals, including a hotel employee, an artist, and 2 Amtrak employees, were shot, most suffering non-fatal injuries. The only fatality occurred in February 1984 when Richard, a 29-year-old Amtrak engineer, was killed. After this, the shooter ceased activity, and no other incidents were linked to this spree. One of the lead detectives on the case, Joseph Pello, found himself at the center of controversy. NYPD Commissioner Ward accused Pello of orchestrating a cover-up to protect the shooter, likening the situation to a Watergate-level scandal. Pello denied these accusations, but some believe the NYPD may have tried to bury the case to avoid public embarrassment. This theory could explain the sparse documentation available, as only a few newspaper sources from the 80s covered the events in detail. Ultimately, the mystery of the Penn Station shooter remains unsolved, leaving both investigators and the public with unsettling questions about the perpetrator's identity and motives. Black holes are regions in space where mass or energy is so densely packed that the required escape velocity, the speed needed to break free from their gravitational pull, exceeds the speed of light. Because not even light can escape their intense gravitational field, black holes appear completely black, with nothing visible emerging from their depths. Typically, black holes are thought to form from massive stars collapsing in on themselves, making them at least as large as stellar masses, comparable to the size and mass of a star. Micro-black holes, however, are a theoretical class of black holes that would be far smaller, potentially even on the scale of subatomic particles, like atoms. Physicists speculate that these mini black holes might have been formed during the extreme conditions that existed just after the Big Bang, when matter was packed into the universe's smallest conceivable scales. Unlike traditional black holes, whose formation and properties fit into the framework of general relativity, micro-black holes would challenge our current understanding of physics. If micro-black holes were discovered, they could point to limitations in general relativity, prompting scientists to explore new theories to explain these entities and even revise foundational concepts in space science. This could lead to a broader rethinking of gravity, space-time, and even our universe's structure and origin. Missy Bevers, a devoted mother of 3 and fitness trainer, regularly held early morning boot camp sessions at a local Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas, close to her home. Tragically, on the morning of April 18, 2016, Missy was found murdered inside the church. She had been brutally beaten, likely with a hammer or pickaxe, in an attack that stunned both the police and her community. Security footage from the church captured a mysterious figure moving through the building around 4 a.m., about an hour before Missy's arrival. This individual, clad in full police tactical gear, was observed breaking windows and attempting to open doors. At 4:18 a.m., Missy entered the church. Tragically, she would be discovered dead shortly before her class was set to begin at 5 a.m. Though the actual murder was not captured on film, investigators strongly suspect the person in the video is her killer. Due to the bulky tactical gear, identifying the figure has been challenging, as it obscures any defining features. The individual appears to have a limp, though it's uncertain whether this was genuine or staged. When Missy's father-in-law was noted to have a similar limp, speculation rose, though he was ultimately cleared by an alibi. Missy's husband was also scrutinized, as his subdued demeanor in interviews raised suspicions. However, some believe this could have been his way of coping with grief. Theories about the killer's identity vary widely. Some suggest the limp could have been staged to falsely implicate her father-in-law. With no signs of theft or missing items, it seems unlikely that this was a botched burglary. The footage showing the individual breaking windows and checking doors has led some to believe it was an attempt to stage the crime scene as a break-in. The motive for Missy's murder remains elusive. She had no known conflicts or enemies to explain such a targeted attack, leaving her family, friends, and investigators grasping for answers and struggling to find closure. The Nazca lines are a fascinating collection of ancient geoglyphs located in the Nazca Desert of Peru. Created between 500 BC and 500 AD, these massive designs were formed by digging into the desert floor, revealing a layer of lighter-colored soil beneath the surface. The exposed lines, rich in lime, hardened over time due to the natural moisture in the desert, which preserved them across centuries. Only fully visible from above, the Nazca lines went unnoticed for much of their existence. Recent technological advancements, especially the use of drones, have led to the discovery of additional lines, expanding the known collection to roughly 80 to 100 geoglyphs in total. The designs depict a variety of figures, including animals like hummingbirds, monkeys, fish, and cats, as well as trees, flowers, and other abstract forms. The purpose behind the creation of these lines is still a mystery, and multiple theories have been proposed. Some suggest they were made to honor deities or signal messages to the gods, possibly even extraterrestrial visitors. Others think the lines may have been created as a way to mark water sources in the arid desert landscape. Another theory proposes that the lines served as astronomical markers, helping the Nazca people track the positions of celestial bodies or significant solar events like the equinoxes. The Rumbling Mountains of North Carolina refers to a mysterious event that occurred in 1874 around Bald Mountain, where locals reported feeling powerful tremors and hearing loud booms emanating from beneath the ground. Some residents even claimed to witness smoke and vapor rising from the earth, sparking fears of an impending volcanic eruption in an area not typically associated with such activity. Panic quickly spread throughout the region, leading many to release their livestock into the forests, engage in fervent prayer, and brace for what they believed might be the end. The timing of these unusual rumblings coincided with a revival meeting held by a local preacher who reportedly prayed for the mountain to shake and tremble as a display of divine power. As word of the event spread, newspapers across the state sent reporters to investigate, intensifying public anxiety as the story gained widespread attention. When investigators arrived on the scene, however, they found no physical evidence of seismic activity. Despite the numerous first-hand accounts, no geological signs of tremors, smoke, or vapor were observed. The reports relied solely on eyewitness testimonies, prompting skeptics to doubt the validity of the entire phenomenon. After a few months, the strange rumblings ceased as suddenly as they had begun, leaving the mystery unsolved. The Nemesis hypothesis proposes that our sun might once have had a companion star, a dim red or brown dwarf orbiting at a vast distance, around 1.5 light-years away. This theory was put forward in 1984 by two scientists, Richard Muller and Mark Davis, in an attempt to explain a curious pattern. It appeared that major mass extinctions on Earth occurred roughly every 26 million years, as seen in the fossil record. Nemesis was theorized as the unseen trigger, disturbing objects in the distant Oort cloud and sending comets hurtling toward the inner solar system, increasing the likelihood of catastrophic impacts with Earth. In a binary system, two stars orbit a common center rather than existing as solitary entities. While binary systems are common in the universe, they typically involve stars orbiting each other much closer than the proposed orbit of Nemesis. Still, a star at this extreme distance is not outside the realm of possibility. The idea was that over time, Nemesis drifted farther from the Sun, taking up a highly eccentric orbit. Despite being a compelling idea, no solid evidence has ever surfaced for Nemesis. Modern telescopes and sky surveys haven't detected any dim star in the theorized orbit, and as astronomical technology has improved, the likelihood of such a body existing undetected has become increasingly unlikely. The case of the Persian princess began with the intriguing discovery of a mummy in Pakistan in 2000. The mummy, found elaborately prepared and wrapped in linens styled like those of ancient Egypt, was housed in a gilded coffin within a stone sarcophagus. Adorned with a golden crown and a chest plate inscribed with Persian writing, the find was initially proclaimed to be the mummy of a Persian princess, allegedly a daughter of King Xerxes of Persia dating back to 600 BC. This claim caused excitement in the archaeological world, as mummification was predominantly an Egyptian custom, and no Persian mummies had previously been documented. However, skepticism emerged when experts conducted carbon dating on the coffin, revealing it to be only about 250 years old. Further examination of the body itself revealed even more inconsistencies. The corpse showed signs of recent decomposition, suggesting it was only a few years old, and the mat beneath the body was dated to around 5 years prior. The Persian inscription displayed grammar errors, aligning more closely with modern Persian than with ancient scripts. Additionally, unlike traditional Egyptian mummies, in which the heart was often preserved, this body had no organs, a further clue that something was amiss. Investigators soon theorized that the body might be that of a modern woman who died around 1996, possibly from a car accident. With these findings, the focus of the case shifted from an archaeological marvel to a possible instance of murder and fraud. Interpol and local authorities launched an investigation, but the true identity of the woman and the motive behind the elaborate deception remain unknown. Novolesnaya Street Jane Doe refers to an unidentified woman found dead in Moscow in 2006, the suspected victim of convicted Russian serial killer Alexander Elistratov. Known for targeting and robbing his victims, Elistratov was eventually held responsible for the deaths of 6 individuals between 2005 and 2007. Tragically, this Jane Doe was among them, but despite efforts by investigators, her identity has remained a mystery. No family members or acquaintances ever came forward, and with no identification documents, her name and story remain unknown. The Oak Island Mystery is a captivating saga involving tales of buried treasure, secret societies, and mysterious artifacts. Situated in Nova Scotia, Canada, Oak Island has drawn attention since the 1700s, with countless people convinced that priceless treasures are hidden beneath its surface. Speculations about these rumored riches range from pirate gold to legendary artifacts such as the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant. Some theories even suggest that the buried treasure may belong to the elusive Knights Templar. The Knights Templar, a medieval order of warrior monks, wielded significant power in both warfare and finance. Their sudden disappearance fueled rumors of hidden wealth. According to one theory, the Templar treasure was taken to Scotland, where they received protection from the Sinclair family. Some speculate that they later sailed to North America, possibly transporting their fortune to a secluded spot like Oak Island. Interest in Oak Island's mystery surged when in the 1700s, a settler named Daniel McGinnis discovered a strange depression on the island. When he and others began digging, they encountered wooden platforms and signs of human activity, leading many to believe they had stumbled upon a carefully constructed treasure pit. Over the years, several excavations reached depths over 200 feet, but were repeatedly thwarted by flooding, thought to be connected to ocean-fed flood tunnels, suggesting a sophisticated design meant to protect whatever lies within. Even prominent figures like Franklin D. Roosevelt, who remained intrigued by Oak Island throughout his life, as well as Hollywood stars Errol Flynn and John Wayne, became fascinated by the mystery. Adding to the legend is a so-called Curse of Oak Island, which claims that 7 men must die before the treasure can be found. To date, 6 have reportedly lost their lives in the quest. The mystery surrounding Peter Bergman unfolds with the discovery of an unidentified man who was found dead on a beach in Sligo, Ireland, on June 16, 2009. A local resident, Arthur Canella, reported finding him lying naked with his clothes scattered along the shoreline. The man carried no identification, and every tag had been carefully removed from his clothing, adding to the challenge of identifying him. Although he was believed to have used the name Peter Bergman and appeared to be in his late 50s or early 60s, authorities found no record of this name in the UK. The sole clue was his entry in a hotel log, but the address he provided was fictitious. Surveillance footage tracked his movements around Sligo, showing him repeatedly leaving his hotel with a full purple bag, only to return with it empty. He seemed to deliberately avoid CCTV cameras, as though attempting to prevent any documentation of his actions. Police traced Peter's last activities. He visited the post office to purchase stamps and envelopes, then took a taxi to an isolated beach, Ross's Point, where he inquired about a place to swim. After a brief visit, he returned to his hotel. The next day, he checked out, took a bus back to Ross's Point, and was last seen by a woman around noon. His body was discovered on the beach the following morning. The post-mortem examination revealed that Peter suffered from advanced prostate cancer, multiple bone tumors, and severe heart damage. Despite his condition, no medication was found in his system, suggesting he was untreated. This has led to theories that he may have come to Sligo intending to end his life quietly, perhaps as a way to escape his pain. Others speculate that the secrecy surrounding his actions might indicate a hidden past, potentially as a former spy, someone escaping a dangerous situation, or a person with connections to organized crime. The mystery of an ancient structure submerged under Ontario's Lake Huron invites us to look back nearly 10,000 years to a time that predates the region's forests and reveals what could be one of North America's earliest human-made constructions. Discovered in the eastern part of Canada, this enigmatic structure suggests evidence of intelligent life and organized building practices long before the advent of European settlers or even the indigenous groups historically associated with the area. Situated on the lake bed, the structure features a massive 1,000-pound rock, carefully balanced on top of 7 smaller stones. Together, this arrangement sits on a large slab near an underwater ledge, evoking the impression of a deliberately crafted monument or marker. Archaeologists speculate that the area surrounding Lake Huron was once dry land and relatively habitable during this era, emerging from the Ice Age when early human populations were sparse and likely formed only small, scattered groups. Some researchers suggest that this might have been an ancient site of reverence or worship, potentially marking a place of significance for its builders. The deliberate positioning and stability of the stones indicate a certain level of skill and intention, hinting that early humans, if they indeed created it, might have attached symbolic or cultural importance to the location. Overton Bridge, located on the road to Overton House in Dumbartonshire, Scotland, has a peculiar and unsettling history. Built in 1895, the bridge has, since the 1950s, gained infamy due to reports of dogs mysteriously leaping off its edge. These falls are fatal, as the bridge stands 50 feet, 15 meters above jagged rocks. Dubbed the Dog Soup Bridge, the phenomenon has puzzled locals and visitors alike. Theories to explain this strange occurrence are varied. Some suggest paranormal involvement, believing that spirits may lure the dogs over the edge. Others propose that the bridge creates an optical illusion for dogs. Its steep slope and overgrown foliage might obscure the dangerous drop, making it difficult for the animals to perceive the fall ahead. A more scientific explanation points to animal sense. The area around the bridge is known to be inhabited by minks and squirrels. Dogs, who are often highly sensitive to mink scent, may be enticed by these animals, driven into a frenzy and distracted by the scents, leading them to run off the edge unknowingly. The Phantom Sub is an eerie incident from World War II involving a U.S. Navy destroyer patrolling near San Francisco in 1944 or 1945. During its mission, the destroyer's crew detected what they believed to be an enemy submarine directly beneath the ship. Acting quickly, they set depth charges to the target's position and launched them. Moments later, a powerful explosion occurred, followed by an oil slick surfacing, a typical sign of a submarine hit. After the explosion, however, the crew found no trace of the submarine on sonar. Many assumed they had destroyed a Japanese submarine, yet doubts soon grew due to the absence of wreckage or further evidence. Years later, a former crew member, still disturbed by the memory, reviewed the ship's logs, only to find no mention of the encounter or any confirmed sinking of an enemy submarine in that area. This omission raised unsettling questions. Had they mistakenly sunk a U.S. submarine, and had this incident been hidden by military authorities? The Poe Toaster is the nickname given to an unidentified individual who paid an annual, mysterious tribute to Edgar Allan Poe by visiting his grave in Baltimore, Maryland, in the early hours of Poe's birthday. This tradition began as early as the 1930s, with sightings documented starting in the 1950s. The Poe Toaster always wore black, with a wide-brimmed hat and a white scarf, and would pour a glass of cognac as a toast to Poe, leaving behind 3 roses in a unique arrangement along with the unfinished bottle. In 1998, the original Poe Toaster reportedly passed away, and a son took over the ritual. This successor left notes containing contentious statements, which led to some onlookers attempting to identify or intercept him. The last confirmed visit by the Poe Toaster was in either 2009 or 2012. In 2016, the Maryland Historical Society revived the tradition, choosing a new, public Poe Toaster. Despite this modern continuation, the original Poe Toaster's identity remains unknown, adding to the mystique of this unique tradition. In 2014, a group of masked men broke into Red Bull Racing's headquarters in Milton Keynes, England, by driving a car through the front entrance. The thieves stole 60 motor racing trophies and cash from multiple machines, totaling approximately £900,000. This incident caused an estimated £300,000 in property damage to the facility. The gang was eventually apprehended, and the majority of the trophies were recovered. However, several trophies remain missing to this day, and their whereabouts are still unknown. Ronald Hughes was a defense attorney who was originally appointed to represent Charles Manson, the notorious cult leader, during the 1970 trial for the Tate-LaBianca murders. Manson's defense strategy involved having 3 of his followers confess to the murders, absolving him of direct involvement. However, 2 weeks before the trial began, Hughes was reassigned to represent one of these followers instead. When Hughes refused to allow his client to incriminate herself, Manson grew furious, as this refusal disrupted his plan. Just before a 10-day recess, Manson ominously told Hughes that he didn't want to see him in court again. Over the break, Hughes went camping in Los Padres National Forest. After a major rainstorm, he stayed behind to continue preparing for the case while his friends returned home, and he was last seen by 3 hikers. When the trial resumed, Hughes was nowhere to be found. Months later, his body was discovered in a severely decomposed, partially devoured state, about 7 miles from his last known location, missing a right arm. Although authorities found no definitive signs of foul play, members of the Manson family claimed responsibility, suggesting it was a retaliation killing, though it remains uncertain if this claim was genuine or meant simply to inspire fear. Hughes's body was discovered on the same day the Manson family members were sentenced to death. In 1997, 5-month-old Sabrina Eisenberg was reported missing from her home in Florida, with her mother, Marlene Eisenberg, discovering her absence early in the morning. Both the garage door and the door leading into the house had reportedly been left open, raising suspicions about a possible break-in. However, due to the unusual circumstances and lack of forced entry, the police initially focused on Sabrina's parents, Marlene and Steve Eisenberg, as potential suspects. Authorities noted that the couple's behavior during their public appeal seemed unusual, and Marlene's polygraph test was inconclusive due to her emotional distress. 2 years later, the parents were arrested and charged with conspiracy and providing false information. Wiretaps allegedly captured conversations where the parents seemed to discuss Sabrina's fate in disturbing terms, but the judge found the audio unclear and ruled it insufficient as evidence, leading to the charges being dropped. Over the years, there have been instances where girls were suspected of being Sabrina, but DNA testing ruled out any connection. To this day, the mystery of Sabrina Eisenberg's disappearance remains unsolved. In 2007, Sergeant Patrick Rust, a 24-year-old U.S. soldier, was found dead under puzzling circumstances just 6 months after he disappeared from a bar in Watertown, New York. Rust, who had recently returned from tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, went out for drinks one night while stationed at Fort Drum. His skeletal remains were tragically discovered half a year later in a field approximately 5 miles from the bar where he was last seen. The circumstances of Rust's death have raised many questions. His army dog tags were missing, yet $80 was still found in his pocket, suggesting robbery wasn't a factor. Despite thorough investigations, no suspects have emerged, and the exact cause of death remains unresolved. 16 years later, Rust's case remains open, leaving lingering mysteries about what truly happened to him that night. The Stanton Bones is a haunting mystery involving Dr. Carrie Stanton, an eccentric figure who lived on and owned California's Santa Cruz Island, the largest of the Channel Islands. Stanton, a doctor by training, returned from New York in 1957 to oversee his family's ranch on the island, which his father, a successful oil and business mogul, had purchased years before. Known for his unusual routines, Stanton led a highly regimented life, hosting guests under strict protocols that included formal dinners, a weekly menu, and a precise evening ritual of oatmeal cookies at exactly 8:30 p.m. Following Stanton's death in 1987, a startling discovery was made on the island in 1990. During a routine inspection, an agricultural commissioner found a sealed copper box tucked away inside a 19th century shed. When opened, the box revealed cremated human remains, along with intriguing clues: a 1940s clothing fastener, several false teeth dating to the 1950s, and a pre-World War II diamond-studded platinum ring. Investigators believed the remains belonged to a woman who had died in the 1950s or 1960s, though how and why they ended up on the island remains unknown. Oddly, the box had no label, which seemed out of place given Stanton's famously meticulous habits. Whether Stanton was aware of the remains, or if they were hidden by someone else, possibly his parents, remains an unanswered question. The identity of the remains has never been confirmed, leaving this peculiar case unsolved and steeped in mystery. The Sandown Clown is a peculiar and mysterious entity that became known following an encounter reported by two children near Lake Common in Sandown, Isle of Wight. The children described the clown as standing over 6 feet tall, with an unusual large spherical head that appeared disproportionately big compared to its body. Its skin had a pale, papery texture, and each hand and foot had only 3 digits. Its face was reportedly painted on in a manner reminiscent of a clown, giving it a surreal and eerie appearance. The children recalled that before meeting the clown, they heard a loud, wailing noise similar to an ambulance siren, which led them across a footbridge and into an open area where the clown was waiting. Holding a strange microphone-like device, the entity used it to communicate with them, though the sound seemed to emanate from the device rather than directly from its mouth. Despite its unsettling look, the Sandown Clown was reportedly friendly and engaged the children in conversation for about half an hour. After the children left to tell their parents, the clown was never seen again, adding to its mystery and leaving its true nature, whether paranormal, extraterrestrial, or otherwise, unknown. Susan Powell, an American woman from Utah, vanished in 2009, a disappearance widely attributed to her husband, Joshua Powell, though he faced no formal charges. On December 9, 2009, Susan attended morning church with her sons, Charles and Braden. Later that day, a neighbor stopped by their home, leaving around 5 p.m., and is believed to be the last known non-family member to see Susan. When Susan and Josh failed to show up for work the next day, and their boys missed daycare, worried relatives reported them missing. Police searched the Powell home, suspecting carbon monoxide poisoning might have rendered the family unconscious. Instead, they found the house empty. Curiously, 2 fans were positioned to dry a damp spot on the couch, while Susan's purse, wallet, and ID remained in the home, contradicting any idea she had left willingly. Her cell phone was later discovered in the family car. Josh returned later that day with the boys, telling police he had taken them camping around midnight, supposedly leaving Susan at home asleep. His story raised eyebrows. He hadn't informed his employer of this plan, and it was unusual to take young children camping after midnight in freezing conditions, especially with daycare scheduled just hours later. Josh even claimed he confused Monday for Sunday. Investigators soon uncovered Susan's blood traces in the house and discovered life insurance policies in her name totaling roughly $1.5 million, along with a letter from Susan expressing fears for her safety. Josh's past included troubling incidents, like an alleged attempt to harm his mother and an incident where he reportedly killed his sister's pet. Following Susan's disappearance, he emptied her retirement accounts, removed the boys from daycare, and allegedly discussed with co-workers how to dispose of a body in abandoned Utah mine shafts. In an eerie twist, Josh's son, Charlie, confirmed they had gone camping that night, adding that his mother had joined them but didn't return. Weeks later, both boys hinted at their mother's death, with one drawing a picture of 3 people in the front of a van and Mommy in the trunk. The case took another dark turn with new allegations implicating Josh's father, Stephen, who was later arrested for possessing a disturbing collection of inappropriate images, including some of Susan. Josh's family then launched a website portraying Susan as unstable, suggesting she had abandoned her family, a narrative many believed was orchestrated by Josh and his brother. Due to these developments, Josh lost custody of his sons to Susan's parents. During a supervised visit with the boys, he locked them inside his home, barring the social worker from entry. An explosion soon rocked the house, killing Josh and the boys. The boys' injuries indicated they had been attacked with an axe, and 2 large gas cans on the property suggested Josh had intentionally set the fire and harmed his sons before perishing in the flames. Suspicion also fell on Josh's brother, Michael, who about a year after the explosion ended his own life. This deeply tragic case left Susan's family heartbroken, as the actions of Joshua and Michael prevented justice from being served and resulted in the loss of Susan and her 2 sons. In 1946, the small city of Texarkana, Texas, became gripped by fear as a masked figure dubbed the Phantom Killer unleashed a reign of terror, committing a series of brutal attacks known as the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. Over just 3 months, the Phantom attacked 8 people, killing 5, and each incident followed a disturbingly familiar pattern, with nighttime assaults on couples in secluded areas. The Phantom's first known attack occurred on February 22nd, targeting Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry. The masked assailant approached the couple's car at a lover's lane, forcing Jimmy out and brutally beating him before assaulting Mary and letting her go. Both survivors described him as wearing a white mask fashioned from a pillowcase with cut-out eye holes. A month later, on March 24th, the Phantom escalated to murder, killing Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore, both shot in the head in a parked car on another secluded road. Just 3 weeks after that, he struck again, targeting teenagers Betty Jo Booker and Paul Martin. After band practice, Paul picked Betty up, and the two drove to a quiet area. Both were later found shot, with evidence suggesting Betty tried to escape before the killer caught up to her. Investigators found matching shell casings from the prior attack, but despite collecting fingerprints, no suspect emerged. The fourth and final attack deviated from the previous pattern. On May 3rd, the Phantom targeted a residence, shooting Virgil Starks through his living room window. His wife Katie, who heard the gunfire, rushed downstairs only to be shot twice herself. Despite severe injuries, Katie managed to escape and survive, though her husband did not. After this incident, no more confirmed attacks were linked to the Phantom Killer. The attacks plunged Texarkana into a state of lockdown, with residents avoiding the streets after dark and authorities conducting a large-scale search for the killer. Hundreds were questioned, but no clear motive or solid lead surfaced. The most prominent suspect was Yoel Swinney, a car thief with a criminal record, and a wife who initially implicated him in the murders, though her story contained inconsistencies. Swinney was ultimately imprisoned for unrelated crimes. Another suspect was H.B., a college student who confessed in a suicide note, but left no concrete evidence tying him to the murders. Despite intense efforts, the case went cold, and the Phantom Killer's identity remains unknown to this day. The Television Ghost was an early 1930s television program broadcast in New York City. The show featured a unique concept. Each episode presented a ghost recounting the story of their own death. Although each episode told a different tale with a new ghost, all of them were portrayed by the same actor, George Kelting. Kelting consistently appeared in simple, ghostly attire, with his face painted white and a sheet draped around him. Given the limitations of the era, the show's visuals were quite basic, closer to a radio show with a static shot of Kelting's head and shoulders as he narrated each story. Each episode lasted only 15 minutes, and the series aired for 2 years before ending in 1933. It is often regarded as one of the first television dramas or anthology series. However, since it was produced so early in television history, no recordings of the show are believed to have survived. The Younger Lady is the informal name given to a mummy discovered in the Valley of the Kings in 1898. Initially, her identity was uncertain, but DNA tests later identified her as the daughter of Pharaoh Amenhotep III, the sister and wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten, and the mother of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. Despite her connections to these prominent figures, she does not appear to have held a significant status during her life. The cause of her death is thought to be from blunt force trauma to her face, though the exact source of the injury remains unknown. It's uncertain whether the impact resulted from an accident, such as a chariot collision or a horse's kick, or if it was an intentional act involving a weapon like an axe or hammer. To this day, the circumstances of her death are still a mystery. The will-o'-the-wisp is a legendary phenomenon deeply rooted in European folklore, often described as a ghostly, flickering light resembling a lantern that misleads travelers, sometimes luring them into perilous areas. This enigmatic light goes by various names, including will-o'-the-wisp, ignis fatuus, Latin for foolish flame, jack-o'-lantern, friar's lantern, and the whimsical hinky punk. Similar lights have been reported worldwide: the St. Louis light in Saskatchewan, the Spook light in Missouri, the Marfa lights in Texas, the Naga fireballs in Thailand, and the Hestalen light in Norway. In European lore, the names Will or Jack often represent a mischievous figure, with lantern indicating a guiding light and wisp referring to a small piece of smoldering kindling. A famous Irish tale recounts the story of Stingy Jack, a man who twice deceives the devil. First, Jack convinces the devil to turn into a coin to pay for one last drink, but traps him near a crucifix, preventing the devil from shifting back until he promises to leave Jack alone for 10 years. When the devil returns, Jack tricks him again, carving a crucifix beneath a tree to trap him. This time, the devil agrees never to take Jack's soul. However, when Jack eventually dies, his mischievous life bars him from heaven, and the still irate devil denies him entry to hell. In an act of grudging mercy, the devil gives Jack a single ember from hell to light his way through the eternal darkness. Jack places the ember in a hollowed-out turnip, creating a makeshift lantern. Forever wandering the earth, Jack's haunting figure with his jack-o'-lantern became a symbol associated with Halloween. Over time, the tradition evolved, and pumpkins replaced turnips, giving rise to the familiar carved jack-o'-lanterns we see today. The zip-gun bomber remains an elusive figure who struck fear into New Yorkers beginning in 1982 with a series of deadly booby-trapped mail packages. The first attack targeted Joan Betty Kipp, a 54-year-old high school counselor. She received a package containing a cookbook, but when she opened it, a concealed gun fired, wounding her fatally. She succumbed to her injuries hours later. After a decade-long silence, the bomber resurfaced in 1992 with 4 more booby-trapped packages. One package contained a medallion that, when opened, discharged a shot that injured the recipient and 2 of his relatives, though thankfully none were killed. Another victim, 75-year-old Alice Caswell, was wounded when she opened a similar medallion package. The third attack struck 18-year-old Stephanie Gaffner, who was 8 months pregnant. Opening a package with a concealed book, she was hit by shrapnel from 3 bullets, but both she and her baby miraculously survived. She gave birth to a healthy daughter a few months later. The final known attack involved 77-year-old Richard Bazille, who received a parcel with a video cassette that exploded, though he fortunately emerged unscathed. The attacks appeared random, targeting people of varying ages and backgrounds, with no obvious motive. While police investigated numerous leads, including suspicions around Joan Kipp's husband, the bomber's identity was never uncovered. The Yuba County Five case is one of the most baffling mysteries in recent American history. In 1978, 5 young men from Yuba City, California, went missing after attending a basketball game. The men, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Ted Wire, Jack Hewitt, and Gary Mathias, were described as friendly but had varying mental disabilities or psychiatric conditions. On their drive home, they took an unplanned detour into the remote Plumas National Forest, where their car was found abandoned, well-stocked but undamaged, with the keys missing. It was parked in such a way that experts believe the men had left intentionally. Months later, searchers discovered 4 of the 5 bodies. Ted Wire's corpse lay inside a Forest Service trailer 20 miles from the car, emaciated and surrounded by unused food supplies and heat sources. Nearby, 2 other bodies were found, with a 4th body discovered farther away. Gary Mathias, however, was never found, which has led to numerous theories about his potential role or fate. This tragedy left many questions, such as why they left the car, how they survived as long as they did, and what may have happened to Mathias. Various theories have emerged over the years. One popular idea involves psychological distress, which may have caused disoriented behavior. Another theory suggests they encountered someone who led them astray or scared them enough to flee into the wilderness. Other accounts propose that Mathias, who had a history of schizophrenia, could have experienced a psychotic episode. Despite these speculations, the lack of definitive evidence has led to an enduring mystery.